You're free. I feel you. I feel you. It's been hot down here, of course, but that comes with the territory being in Florida. Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. You are kind of freezing up a little bit. Not sure if that's my end or our end or what. Should be better positioned here. Yeah.
Try to do it regularly because now you kick me in China, then there. So
Yeah, it sounds like you've been everywhere these past few weeks. And just not too long ago,
yeah,
you were with us over here for a few days. Uh, we had a great
yeah. First
discussion.
I was in Florida, then I was a few days home, then I was in China, and then from China come back a few days home, and then go to Denmark. And because also the kids want to have their holiday, so it's something we need to do. So it's no way
Yeah, absolutely. You can't work all the
as
time.
time. But next Wednesday, yeah, as I said, next Wednesday we drive home. So maybe we go on Thursday or something that, and I can go from the laboratory. So
Yeah,
then would be maybe a good possibility. Okay,
yeah.
let us start.
All right. So I think what we were discussing about was kind of touching on what we covered last time, which is some of the differences in reef keeping between Europe and here in the U.S. And I know that not just speaking with you, but from some of the other owners of ICP laboratories like ATI, one of the big discrepancies they see between their American market and the European market is how much more popular and how more often people are doing ICPs in Europe than they are here in the U.S. And
Yeah,
in my experience, in being in all the groups and seeing all the forums and everything, ICPs unfortunately are really mostly used as the last resort to trying to solve a problem instead of just being used proactively to keep from having problems. And I know you've in your market and your numbers, you said that there's a huge discrepancy there. Could you go on more about that? Why Europeans are so much more open to doing regular ICP testing, whereas here in America, we just seem so much more withheld on it, and you only really use it when problems arise.
all other things. And so after the first ICP coming to the market, there was too high promises and too less quality and too less way to do it. And so even in the US, ICP lost the trust, massive. Um, we do now in Canada, which is a way smaller market, we do about nearby 200, 250 tests a week. So, which is a bit more than in the US, but US should be 10 times bigger as
Yeah,
Canada example or Switzerland or other smaller countries. And the point is that from beginning on, the transparency about that, how we do testing, the transparency about which numbers we can use, which ones are a little bit difficult, were totally different as the beginning in the US. And I see that the discussions at the beginning and the usual discussions in the US, if something new coming, are slightly different than in other countries. So it's mostly it's our feeling about yeah, but we have that also, and we can do that also on that way, which is mostly in some product the key, but not in every point. And then you had some ICP suppliers, if you start very early with MS and that stuff, which they use the ICP for seawater as extra money working. So they work for tap water, the labs working for any other things, but not especially for seawater, and that destroys a lot of trust in the US. So, and you 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 personally, for me, are a very a typical point of how US guys going to this ICP. So your core head, you look very deep, and then you test it over 2 3 years. Now you test so long time. I remember when we shipped the first batch. It's really a long time ago. Until that, you test it, and you have absolutely no trust on that. And I think you were influenced also by a lot of discussions, a lot of stuff. And there's not clear in the states. I think nowadays who are the leading companies in this game.
Hmm.
It's looked too much on that what's online talked by some people, but not what is the reality in the background about numbers and about the stability and about if people say we have the most lab machines, or we can do it 25 times better than anybody else. um, that's a that's a little bit a joke, because by the end it's a technology. The technology needs to be learned, because there is no rules for seawater and for marine and aquarium water, and that's what we done. And the differences, and also point why I like to work with you so much, because you're a core head, so you have a core farm, so I can talk to you whatever I want. I have to prove it in your farm. And as soon as I give you an idea, I give you numbers, I change that value a bit, and you come 2 3 weeks later to me and say, "Oh fuck, it's going way better," then it's the proof. So, and I don't care about if it's 1% the perfect test or not. It's the thing overall which makes it different.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things when we started first using ICP here at the farm to start possibly, dosing some of the things that we were obviously deficient on, because when you have corals this dense in some of these systems, you're going to be deficient in a lot of traces. And of course, we've talked about, our heavy use of using calcium hydroxide is going to, cause precipitation of these traces much more as well. But so with me, I've been here almost 6 years at Top Shelf, and so I've been kind of put in charge for the past about 4 or 5 years of that, of really trying to optimize the chemistry in all these systems. And of course, when you have, in the farm alone, we've got 12 systems that are over 1,000 gallons, and some of these systems contain literally millions of dollars in retail of coral. So there's a lot of responsibility in my back. So when it comes to dosing some of these trace metals that can be toxic in certain values, I always very conservative and very, very, very careful. I have to be, because of this responsibility. And I kind of inquired as kind of like, and it's not just that, but it's also they're animals, and I view them as such. So I kind of feel like when I'm deciding whether I'm dosing X, Y, and Z different trace metals, or even some of the macro elements like potassium and things like that, when weighing out, when doing the calculations, you really have to be laser focused on what you're doing, very present, akin to almost like you're flying a commercial airliner. You can't make little mistakes, because little mistakes with some of these, again, toxic, impactful metals like nickel, fluoride, chromium, you make one miscalculation, or one mistake, and it could be mean the death of a lot of animals. So that's something I don't take lightly. So it did take a while for me to get confidence in ICP testing. Like I think we spoke about in the last time, we bought quite a few ICPs from a couple of the different companies here in the U.S. that were offering it, and we kind of pitted them against each other and tested the same system, same water, sent out multiple tests, and really we're looking for the ones that are most consistent. And that's why we eventually started going with Fauna Marin. But even then, like I said, when you came and visited, I would always dose maybe 60 at first, 60% of the recommended dosage for some of these trace metals, and then eventually 70 and 80. As soon as I was getting the corresponding ICPs back telling me I'm not overshooting anything, that's where the confidence really had to be gained. And then, of course, meeting you and having you really down relationships between a lot of those traces and some of those macro elements. It was very educating, and just ever since about 2 months since you came, we have been seeing a lot of positive impacts on raising those levels, which would be contemporarily above natural seawater, which is something at first I was skeptical about, but it makes sense to have a depot of those metals because the amount it's not the ocean. We're dealing with closed systems here that can be exhausted very, very quickly. Um, so yeah, we've been seeing a lot of positive things, but it's understandable that I remember when ICP testing came on the scene, there was a lot of skepticism out there on Reef Central, Reef to Reef, and a lot of the Facebook groups and stuff, on how accurate could it be, can it be trusted. We were, every company seems to have different results, and so I still think there's a lot of work here to do in the U.S. But I wanted to talk about is just it again. It kind of bothers me that I see people in the U.S. only using ICP testing if they're trying to solve a problem, or they have they've got some corals darkening in colors, or some things are RTNing or something like that, and they all their big test kit, calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, and maybe even potassium and stuff are shooting out good numbers. Their pH is good. They don't see anything that metals or anything like that in the tank, as far as like screws and things like that. And they don't think they're having like problems from candles or air fresheners or anything like that. So their last resort is, oh, better spend the money to send out an ICP. And I think it's wrong, because I think that we could utilize ICP testing a lot better here in the U.S. if we do it more consistently to really, really improve the health of the animals and prevent some of these problems that people run into.
Mm. A lot of people using the ICP only issue. The argumentation is mostly about cost.
Yeah.
So, and on the other side, we have a lot of customers doing every week to be on point. Standard anemones, anemone fish, and something like that. It's surely not necessary to test it every week. If you want to go pH system like calc water, or then you will have precipitations, which of think by self, like we talk about the fluoride level, or if you use some specific salts, they have very low sulfur levels, and this causing problems over the time. Of trace elements bottle wise, to fill up what they missed at the beginning. So we in Europe, we work a little bit more efficiently, so that included in relations, and then at the end with those very little elements, if for the need of the tank, if you have high lighting or a super high bio load, something like that, and you need maybe sometimes more zinc, sometimes like more that, and that you see on the ICP test on the dynamic elements, and all the others are based in the care system and not like the high pH, which bring them down and which are not there. And there we see a massive difference between the ICPs in Europe, in Asia, and to the US. Even Canada to US is massive, the difference.
Really?
So, and yeah, absolutely. You can see by the ICP, oh, he comes from the US. That's, even if you have +1 number before. It is really strange, but I see it changes also a bit. So we had a lot of people asking, oh, I have the ICP test, what's going on? And more is reading the knowledge base, and more is reading in the lab account what they can do. And so step by step, I think also helpful about some live streams and guys like you, make them more understandable that the relation of specific elements are more important than the single element by self. So, and this is something what we invented to go out with these relations. And there's one big difference, I think, which I need to say also, that we do not work theoretically against. There's no ICP test on the market which has a core farm running since these also 20-25 years and longer. And so we go in, and everything what we test we check in the farm, and you can believe me, in the first years we have a lot of fights between the lab team and us as the core team on who do the interpretation, because I said this is bullshit what you detect, and they told me it's 100% correct because they follow a rule which is made for salt water or for whatever, but not for aquarium water. And that we have really to learn, which costs us a lot of tests and cores at the end. But the most important part of this technology is the emotion and the experience in chorus, that you can see the changes and then you know you're in the right way. Only looking for the numbers is difficult.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And there's some of the what we call like a old school reefer wisdom of um,
Mhm.
it sounds funny at sometimes, and it just sounds like it's complete BS. But in many cases, it's not. When I hear people saying, "Well, I know when my potassium's low, when this coral doesn't extend as much as does normally, or if I know that my my calcium's low, if this coral starts darkening a color, just things like that as an examples that a lot of people will dismiss and say, no, that's complete nonsense. There's so many variables involved, and there may be some, but I do think there is some truth to that, and I think that's what you're trying to kind of describe. I remember
Mm.
when you I believe it was the oh, I forget the genus of coral that you were talking about when you said the barium level or the barium level wasn't right in the tanks, and the ICP guys at your lab many years ago were saying, no, no, it's fine. Because and you said, no, it's low because this coral's not blue right now, and
Yeah,
they
that's
wouldn't listen
yeah,
to
the
you.
bromine level exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had a huge fight. It goes over months. It goes because a very specific thing in the machines to show the right bromine level,
Hmm.
and we made a mistake. So the guys in the lab following rules, following norms, which they know from university and from their knowledge. So we have organic chemistry guys there. We have specific lab technicians. We have very experienced analyzed with PhD and biologists study everything, which 8 people in the lab, and they follow that what they learned. And what is always hard for them when they come to us and uh, using the standard methods, they fail and they see that they fail. So that something is not correct and not in this right way. And we show them on the course. And so everybody comes into the lab needs to learn that we need to develop our own method for aquarium water and all that what we use in artificial sea salts, which makes a little bit of different. It's not necessary in every chemical, so we don't need to talk that. But one of these different, you see that we have the syringes and the syringe filter in our tests to keep the water stable, and we keep the lab in one place together because we need to do every day the check to the core farm. So we do every day. We do 12 tests in the core farm, and we get the test in the afternoon. Then we look over the test, we look at the chorus, and if everything looks okay and looks it's okay, then I know that the lab's working on a proper way. But these mistakes we had last year, 2 years ago, we had so much discussions about the situation about the low sulfur and losing a lot of philia and illnesses and BG day. How is the name of it? These rapid the English word for it, rapid tissue necrosis. Get it?
Hmm.
Brown jelly disease. So now I had it. So and it was clear that we see in all the numbers we're doing that all over the world the salt loses so and in starting in December, mid of 23, we find out very fast, according to all the numbers and the data we had, that when we raise up the sulfur level on the normal situation to make it higher, then we never have these brown jelly disease, and we don't need any antibiotics to treat the corals. It's only a questions about the specific relation. So that's why we invented then these FSS, which is a relation between fluoride, strontium, and sulfur. And since we run the tanks and some farms in Europe and in Asia with that specific relations, then they never had any loss in the affiliates.
Interesting. Yeah, I know that that was something that we had to deal with a while back. Is that the salt we're currently using is sulfur deficient, so I've had to dose quite a bit of sulfur to get them back up into around the 900 range. And it is, I mean, sulfur is important. It's one of the major components of seawater. It's in higher concentrations than calcium alkalinity and even magnesium. We're talking sulfates. So I do think it's an overlooked thing. I think strontium's another overlooked metal here in the U.S. Um, that I've heard people and seen people debating that, oh, strontium, you could dose it if you want, but it doesn't really do anything. I don't know where their base is on that, but I know that I've always thought that strontium's always been a pretty important part of not only just coral health and
Corey, yeah, but Corey, about the strontium, this is one of the funniest thing ever. You can read whatever book you want. They all explain you if strontium is in the skeleton, it's an accident. So this they have no rule,
right,
nothing. But you can ask every coral farmer in the world, everyone, and you ask them, does it matter if you have no strontium? And all of them, not one single, will say, oh no, it does not matter. Every farmer professional will told you if there's no strontium, I'm fucked. So that's it.
yeah,
Everybody told you that. And I have two, three studies who explain how strontium is working in the skeleton. And that's a very simple thing. At the beginning, when they do the calcification, there's no strontium in the little small particles they produce. But later then they pump the strontium into this calcium carbonate to make the crystallizing smaller and softer, that they can produce the very small holes and drainage systems which they need in the skeleton. So it's proof that it's need. But till today, you have a lot of people running on knowledge about.
right, right. Like the it goes to proof that the system behind me requires about 132 grams of dry strontium chloride a week just to maintain its strontium level. So it's obviously getting sucked up pretty fast for being an element in that. But it makes sense, and it's interesting. I didn't know that strontium was implemented in them kind of creating their skeletal matrix of the faca of where they're at. But I know that it definitely gets sucked up, which when you see elements getting depleted like that in any tank, it's obviously got biological importance. So it's something that needs to be observed and looked at. Um, but yeah, I think there's a lot of that goes off on some of the forums and some of the groups where there's people stating this misinformation as if it were fact, and you ask them for their sources, and they can't provide you any peer-reviewed, published sources on it, and they try to say, oh well, I've been reefing for a long time, and so that's why it doesn't make sense. There's no science in it, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, that rolls us onto another topic that I think is really really controversial here in the U.S. In fact, my colleague Taras was just in a Reef Bum video talking about it, is coral nutrition and feeding corals. You still have a large camp here in the U.S. of people that say, oh yeah, I feed my corals, they eat fish poop, which I'm not saying you have to feed coral, suspended coral foods to have a successful, nice looking reef tank. Um, but I mean, again, the published peer-reviewed studies have been done. There's multiple out there on using filtered natural seawater as control versus raw unfiltered water versus corals receiving filtered seawater that is also getting fed reefroids and other foods, like foods developed by the Australian Institute of Marine Sciences that they've developed. And you look at the growth rates, the mortality rates, and it's clear that giving corals additional suspended foods increases growth rate, vitality, and that just shows you it's an overall markers of health. So I wanted to hear your kind of take on that and why we still have a camp here in the U.S. and maybe even Europe as well. I'm curious if there's Europeans that don't believe in using coral specific foods. They just feed their fish and they go on the thing where fish poop feeds my corals and that's it.
I think in this topic it's quite same. So you have this group and the other group. Again, you have experienced and people who only read or look on ChatGPT or whatever. So
God help
with
us.
no experience. And today we have all over the world. You see that for very complex topics, uh, everybody try to find a very simple answer, which is not simple at all because we have tons of different corals living in many different habitats. And in these habitats, we have tons of different food. And um, what I must say also, which is totally underrated, is the situation that we have no natural reef. So it is that was said. So starting with numbers and recommendation, who looks for natural reef, which these ICP customers doing, they totally forget that corals stay in very clean water, super clean water, with, by the way, nothing in, but tons of food. So they get a lot of their elements, a lot of their nutrients. They get directly food during that night. So why our Lord gives the corals polyps and fully packed with stinger with weapons to catch animals? So
Thank you.
why the heck he's doing that? So there's a sense behind it. Even there's only Xenia and some other very sensitive soft cores who take only organic compounds out of the water, who don't do that. But the absolute 99.9% of all the cores building up polyps, building up stingers, catching food, and they can catch really big stuff and take it in. And what the most people don't understand is that if a coral takes a zooplankton, a worm, a little shrimp, this shrimp eats another one before, eats phytoplanktons before, eat bacteria before. So they concentrate all the nutrients and trace elements into the body and then they eat. And there's a nice study about how many food is available in 250 gallons over 24 hours in a reef. And we talk about nearby 4 pounds of available food in average. So we have some limited reefs which have lower, but also a lot which have more. So, and in our aquarium, go high, which stops the coral for growing. It's like an overfertilization. So
Yeah.
food is a very complicated thing. You can keep corals without food, but not every one of them, only a few. And if you want to have healthy corals with a cute immune system and with a proper grow, then you need to feed corals, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. They evolved to have mouths and gastric cavities for a reason. Is always part of my shtick when posed with that debate. But I've just noticed here on the farm, the amount of some systems, if we have algae issues on one of them, we'll back feeding suspended foods off, and we'll dose potassium phosphate and either ammonia or nitrate to keep those nutrients at an acceptable 1 to 100 ratio. Um, but the systems that I'm really actively able to give a lot of food and feed often, I always see the best growth, the best coloration on them, and it boggles my mind that there's still experienced reefers out there that swear that that all coral food is a sham and you're wasting your money but it is a very good, interesting subject that you brought up about preservatives in some of these foods, and it's probably available in a lot of the prepackaged coral foods as well to extend their shelf life. And it makes sense that they could have a bacterial inhibiting effect that could impact the coral's microbiome. I actually never really considered that, but that is actually a really, really interesting topic to delve on.
The long time It's a long time situation, while we also get these massive problems with boring algae all day long. So
Mhm.
that's when I developed the food. I was some years in the Philippines and catching plankton, and there I find out that this is a total different situation like we did the food before. So that's why some specific product like the Mines is so weird, because that's at the end we take the plankton, we hydrolyze it, and then we stop it with salt, so there's no preservatives instead of salt in. But that
Right,
makes it a little bit difficult for us to produce it, because it means we have to have a full concentrate pack. Yeah. So if you compare such foods together, it is expensive to bottle against to other ones. But due to the situation that you have 500, 600 times more food in the bottle, it's way cheaper over the long time. So, and
right.
at the beginning, many people buy the 1 liter bottle, and I told to them, "Hey, what this is good for a coral farm for 1 year. So what do you want to do with your 100-gallon tank?" Yeah, but
Yeah,
I need a lot of food for the course. No, no, take the 100 ml. That's more than enough. So, but that's really one topic which we look very close in the last 2 3 years about the biofilm, because maybe you know it. All these sexual reproduction, which based in Germany and in UK, we provide also with our ICP staff, and so we
right.
we have all this data. I look from them from the nutrients, and we visit these guys and see how the corals are, and there we find out that make specific food, um, using specific materials, gain
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Hmm.
of products what they need, and they can prepare it, and that's a part of a recipe people using who do the sexual reproduction for coral. So it's absolute coral feeding stuff, and at the same time it reduces the nutrients in the tank, because the skimmer works better due to the specific mixture. So you can see on the Fauna Marin YouTube site, it calls Coral Smoothie. It's a new mix.
Right.
You can go to the supermarket, you can buy the stuff, and you need only some vitamins, some amino acids, which you add into this solution, and then you will have great success with the course.
Yeah, that's the one with the calcium carbonate powder on it as well, the coral snow.
Yeah,
We've been actually considering here at the farm because it would be a lot cheaper than some of the other foods that we do use. In addition, we use some oyster feast. We use Benepets. We use sometimes if phosphate really needs to come up in a system, we'll use Reefroids. And we also use our own in-house grown phytoplanktons from Reef Genetics, which I really like to use as well. But we have been thinking about investing in, like a Vitamix blender to keep here at the farm solely to make, this new coral smoothie that we've seen on your site and you've talked about, because it is something that is intriguing. And then, like you said, it's the proof of whether it works or not. It's there that the people that are actually growing and studying coral reproduction in laboratories are utilizing this. So I
Mm.
really think there needs to be more translation over that from that to the hobby. And there needs to be a better communication just all around between those in the scientific and the biology, marine biology side of it, coral conservation, and the hobby side. And I do feel like it's a little, but I don't think like it's some of that open line of communication could be a lot better, I think, on some of their findings that they release.
It could absolutely. At the moment, I see more that there's too much people going around anonymously, mostly be part of companies blaming.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, Claude, I think it's like that across a lot of hobbies here in the U.S. That the Instagram people with the most followers and whatnot are going to be the ones that have the most influence, and there's going to be a lot of, oh well, it's true because so and so said so, and I think that needs to end. But I also think that there unfortunately here in the U.S. there is a lot of talking down to other companies, like you said, back and forth going on that is just unprofessional. And I think it kind of clouds up that information sharing that I'd so much like to see more of in our hobby alone. Um, but I don't want to hold you too long, Claude, on especially if you're on vacation with your family. So if you want to wrap
Good.
this up,
It's always a it's always a pleasure with you, you know.
absolutely.
But what you have in the US, what I must say, which I really hope that we can get this in Europe back soon. The one thing is that your whole country speaks one language. In Europe, we have unfortunately several languages. So I speak three languages, so I can follow a few countries, but not all,
Hmm.
which is not good because how more people doing the same, how more knowledge you can have. Um, and you have a quite good group. We see them organizing Reef retreat and that things going on.
Yeah.
So, and that's something very cool and a very good development. In any case, it needs not that I have to be okay with every idea we'll be discussing there, but that's not the point. The point is that there are discussions, and how more people going to these meetings and how more is reporting about that meetings, how better it is at the end. So because this discussion brings learning to the system. For the standard reefers, um, I my recommendation is something a little bit different, because if these guys sitting together, we're talking.
Right.
If you want to start a reef tank, is my recommendation, go to guys like Corey or go to Top Shelf, which have to prove because they have the core farm. there are some in the states who have nice farming and can do that. So go to these guys because they know definitely what they do. And some of them, like Corey, had the certification of ICP, so they go to deep training about the relations, interpretations of ICP. So if you have large tanks and really big issues and need to solve them fast and proper, then you can hire such guys. And get the right results and the support over ICP and the experience what they have as core farmers. So there's they're real specialists behind that thing. So which we it's a system which we're doing the last few years that we do training to all these stores and core heads. Which we find some in the world. Now there are few which are really really good when you go to their talk. And you know that was I was really impressed about your farm. So because I see
Oh,
the detail and the love you push in and the amount of time you push in and I see how you print out every ICP and you're asking me about every single detail when I told you, oh, this element, don't care about this element, and you're still asking, yeah, but what can we do that and that? I said, no, no, don't take care of this element. So it's also my pleasure to have the possibility to talk with you because I learned also a lot from you, definitely. Yeah, we can do also some which we do very successful here were some seminars. So we can maybe it's something for you that you have some of the customers, you invite them not too much. And then we're doing a seminar of a Saturday over several hours when we go into the lab and explaining every detail so people can also learn how to use ICP for their system. So that we're doing once a month in our here in Germany. We do that. So it's mostly 10, 15 people. Going over Zoom or they visit us, so but we can do also over Zoom, and then we do a seminar where we go also into the deep how to use an ICP properly, how to do the interpretation. So if you have some
mhm.
specific customers, then we can organize that for them. So it should be also possible. Definitely.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool. Well, like I said, Claude, I've got some work I got to do, and
Yeah.
I really appreciate you for getting on live with me because I understand that you're on your vacation or holiday,
All
as
good.
you guys call it over in Europe. So I
Yeah,
really
but for
appreciate you
you,
for
I
getting
do
on.
it.
But yeah, I look forward to maybe next week on Thursday. We'll try to put
Yeah.
something together.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll be there. Thanks a lot, my friend.
Adios, Claude.
Thanks. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Hey, you too.